Let's understand how trauma works using the Disney short Piper. Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, YouTube's post-traumatic parenting expert. On this channel, we talk about how the trauma of our past has impacted our current parenting, how to give our kids the healthy childhood we never had, or if recent events in our life have left us reeling, hello pandemic, then this is how we reclaim our psychological resources for parenting. So many of you have asked how we can understand trauma and what's the difference between trauma and difficult stuff that people have gone through. How do we make that distinction? How do we understand the difference? So let's look at Piper. So at the beginning of the movie, we have Piper, who is a cute little sandpiper. I'm gendering her as she, don't know why. So Piper is having a very normal developmental trauma, what we call a developmentally expected upheaval. Her mother is not going to be feeding her anymore. Her mother wants her to search for little clams and crabs and other things, seafood that she can eat. So Piper's waiting for mom to feed her, and mom's like, nope, come on. We're going to go fish. We're going to go get our food. And this is the normally developmentally expected trauma that we go through, right? We might go through that the first day of kindergarten, the first time someone pushes us on the playground, the first time we fall down and we bleed, right? Those are these developmentally expected traumas. They're overwhelming experiences. They're scary. They make us feel big emotions. But if we're being parented properly, if we have the proper emotional support, we get through those transitions, as scary as they are. The first time we step on that big yellow school bus, the first time we go to kindergarten, right? The first time we go to high school. These are upheavals in our life. They can be very scary. The first time we have to read out loud in class or do multiplication in our head, it's scary, it's overwhelming, it feels big, and yet we can do it because we have that developmentally appropriate support that helps us get through this minor upheaval. But then what happens is Piper gets a little distracted as she's digging in the sand, and this giant wave comes over her. And if you have ever seen, I feel like this depiction over here of Piper's trauma, where she's all ruffled up and her eyes are glazed, and it's like, what just happened? This is literally the image that I think of trauma, because when I think about trauma, I think of an experience that was too much, too big, too overwhelming, too gigantic for our brain to cope with. So our defenses were completely overwhelmed. We had nothing to hold on to. We just felt completely alone in this gigantic experience that was way too big for our brain to metabolize. That is what trauma is. And that's why it makes no sense for people to play what I call trauma poker, where they try to compare traumas and see who wins this sort of Olympics of human suffering. So it's sort of like, I see your bullying experience and I raise you being beaten by my stepfather. I see you being beaten by your stepfather and I raise you a cancer diagnosis, where we can do that. We can play that trauma poker game, but first of all, nobody wins. Second of all, very often it's not our experience, it's our experience of our experience. So that when we've experienced something that's overwhelming and too big for our brain to metabolize, what did we make of it? How did we understand it? Who is there to support us through it? In this experience, Piper is totally shell-shocked, the original definition of trauma, and alone and overwhelmed. After that, she has a trauma app in her brain. The trauma app is the part of our brain that now exists to keep us safe, or at least feeling safe. And her trauma app says, no way, you are not going back into the waves. I don't care. Well, of course, that's not making Piper actually safe, because no hunting in the waves means no food. No food means eventual starvation and not survival. But it feels safer to stay away from the beach, right? To hide in the bushes and not go to the beach. Piper's mom is not going to be feeding her. Piper's mom is absolutely not going to keep giving her, clams forever. So it's a problem. Piper eventually ventures forth with the help of these two little crabs who show Piper. She notices how the crabs, when a wave is coming, they burrow down. And a lot of that is her trauma, giving her a different perspective on the world because she's not dashing forward to get the next clam and next clam and next clam. Because she's hanging back, she has a moment to observe the world and to learn something. And she sees that how the horseshoe crabs burrow down into the sand so that when a wave comes over them, they're anchored, and the wave is uncomfortable and difficult and scary, and for a moment you can't breathe. But then when the wave goes away, first of all, while you're under the water, you can see where all the clams are, so it's easier to then hunt for them because you know their location because you're under the water with them and you can actually see them. Second of all, it's only a moment. You're safe. You're not going to get washed out to sea. And then the wave goes back, which again is such a beautiful metaphor for trauma. The wave comes, the wave recedes, the wave comes, the wave recedes. That's literally how our emotions are. Our emotions overwhelm us, they recede. They overwhelm us, they recede. Our body cannot hold on to heightened emotion for too long. Our body is built on a principle of homeostasis. Our body always wants to go back to its regular typical way of functioning. So if we're in a heightened alarm state, eventually we become calm simply because an emotion passes over us, recedes, passes over us, recedes. In the same way with Piper, the trauma, the wave crashes over her, but now she knows how to burrow down into the sand because her trauma, this is where I say trauma can be transformative. Trauma can be our superpower. We never want to say that in this sort of toxic positive way, like, yay, me, I was traumatized, now I become a superhero. But there's some truth to that. There's a reason most superhero movies start with those types of origin stories and start with that type of, first there was a trauma and an upheaval, and then there was some progress. The reason for that is trauma can be transformative. Trauma can allow us to see the world in different ways. It can allow us to find out things about ourselves, strengths we had, coping tools we had that we didn't know we were capable of. I feel like my trauma made me very uncomfortable with discomfort. And my job is to talk about uncomfortable topics with people. Uncomfortable is a territory I'm very familiar with. So in that sense, my trauma became my superpower. It also pointed me towards my research interest. All research is me-search. So it pointed me towards my interest in treating trauma, in helping post-traumatic parents. So my trauma in many ways was an opportunity for me to learn and see the world in a different way. Doesn't mean I would sign up for it again. But once I've had it, trauma can be transformative. So Piper hanging back sees the way the horseshoe crabs burrow down and learns a new skill. And then we see at the end, Piper goes and knows exactly where all the biggest clams are. Not only does Piper get the biggest clam for herself, she gets the biggest clam for the whole entire community, and everybody is feasting from the bounty that Piper has now transformed her trauma into. So I really like Piper as a metaphor for the post-traumatic parent. That parent that was so overwhelmed, it was too much, it was too fast, it was too loud, it was too much for the brain to metabolize. We were overwhelmed, the world felt unsafe, there was a wave breaking over us, we felt like we couldn't survive. And that created the opportunity to see ourselves and the world in a different way. And from that opportunity comes our ability to parent differently, to parent in accordance with our values, comes that transformation. This is my AIM model: acceptance, integration, mission. We have to accept the waves. The waves are going to come. We cannot hold back the ocean. Traumatic experiences are going to happen. Stressful experiences are going to happen. Our trauma app is going to be reawakened many, many, many times, especially as post-traumatic parents. Because if there's one thing a parent wants to do, it's parent well and keep the little humans alive. Our trauma app is all about survival. So parenting wakes up our trauma app. So we have to accept that as much as our trauma app would like us to, we cannot make the world a safer place for our kids. We cannot fix things. We cannot fix the world. The waves are going to keep on coming. The world's going to keep on being stressful. A lot of times we struggle with our emotions. We try to keep the ocean at bay. We try to not feel our feelings. We try to not feel our stress. That never works. The waves keep coming. We have to accept sometimes I'm going to feel stress. Sometimes my trauma app is going to be operating in full force. Sometimes as a parent, I'm going to feel this anxiety about my kids and it's going to reawaken my trauma. I will be triggered. And then we have to integrate. We have to integrate our trauma into our sense of self. We have to say, oh, because I had trauma, I see the world differently. Because I see the world differently, here's what I know. Here's this wisdom that I have that perhaps other people don't have. For Piper, that was the ability to burrow down into the sand like the crabs and to see where the clams are and to understand how to handle the waves when they break over her because she's experienced that. And finally, mission. How do we use our trauma and the transformative aspects of it to create change and create positive things in the world? For Piper, it was feeding her whole community with this one giant clam. For us, that might be a mission that's very tight within our family. Simply, this is how I'm going to parent my kids. This is how I'm going to parent in accordance with my parenting values. This is the kind of parenting partner and spouse that I'm going to be. Maybe it's larger. These are the people I'm going to serve. For me, it's about treating trauma and helping fellow post-traumatic parents. Maybe it's a different mission entirely. I know what it is to be poor, so I'm going to help other people who don't have enough. I know what food insecurity feels like. I know what harshness feels like. So as a teacher, I am going to be gentle and responsive. For every post-traumatic parent, it's going to be different in accordance with our values, our experience, but we're going to make a mission out of it. And once we do, that's how trauma becomes transformative. And that's why saying trauma is transformative is not toxic positivity, because it's not that trauma was good. It's not that it's okay. It's not that it was a positive thing that happened. It's the meaning we make of it that can be positive. As much as I say my trauma transformed me, would I sign my children up to experience trauma? Of course not. Do I want more trauma for the sake of the transformation? Of course not. But like Piper, once I can't hold the ocean back, once the waves keep breaking over me, I need to learn better and better ways of coping with them. If you're a post-traumatic parent and this resonated with you, if the image of Piper is helping you understand your trauma better, I'm so glad. Welcome to the post-traumatic parenting community. Please like, save, share, subscribe to this channel. Let your friends know about us. We are putting together our post-traumatic parenting community one parent at a time, one parenting decision at a time. And you can also find the post-traumatic parenting community on Instagram, which is where we hang out. You can find us at Dr. Kozlowitz Psychology. We have a subscription and a channel. There are a lot of ways to ask specific questions. So if something wasn't clear on this video, please feel free to message me on Instagram or comment in the comment section below so that we can have a dialogue about this video. If there's another post-traumatic parenting concept that you'd like me to address, please comment, DM, reach out on Instagram. You can also find the Post-Traumatic Parenting podcast available wherever you get your podcast for longer form content. The book is due out soon. We also have the Targeted Parenting blog on Psychology Today. So there are many ways to reach out to me and to connect with the post-traumatic parenting community. We get it because we've been there. We're post-traumatic parents too. Thank you for the gift of your attention.